I'm Patrick Duncan. I'm actually from Silicon Valley. I grew up there in Cupertino and worked there for about 30 years of my career. So I've been kind of in the trenches, and I know quite a bit about the startup technology and all the chaos that involves. Today I hear quite a bit about disruption. I'll kind of translate what that means. Disruptions means getting rich. Now, if you fail to disrupt, you're bankrupt, or your company is out. So today, I'm going to talk about the process of using other people's money, basically risking other people's money on your startup. And what that requires is quite a lot of work. It's called due diligence. And it's the process of convincing other people to give you their money that they risk so that you can possibly get rich. Okay, with any kind of startup, the goal is eventually to monetize the business. Today, that basically means that you're going to be acquired. In the past, it was something different. So I'm going to go through a little bit of the dynamics of what the acquiring company are looking for in a startup. And then I'm going to go, it'll be a little bit dry, but I'm going to go into the details of what due diligence entails. Because really, the better job you do on due diligence, the more money you can make, the more money you can secure, the longer you can stay in business, and also the better you can negotiate with your investors so that when you do get your company acquired and there's a payoff, you get a big chunk of that payoff. Now, there's also going to be some kind of, I guess, what we call war stories in there where I tell you a little bit about actual due diligence projects. I've been on both sides of these projects. I've been on the acquiring company, and I've also been the acquired company. So both sides have their own challenges, and I'll give you a little bit of insight into that. And then finally, I will kind of give you my pitch for how you should be prepared at any time for due diligence. It's not just a one-stop event. It's not just something you do at the end of the cycle. It's something you do throughout the, basically every day, and that you have dedicated staff or resources to perform this function. Okay, I'm going to tell you all about the .com. So this is the .com. It was a period of time where things changed quite a bit. A lot of people tried to get rich. There were a lot of IPOs, and it went pretty well for a while. It zoomed up, and then it crashed. And so this blue line is the IPOs. Now, IPOs have never recovered, and there's some reasons for that. Partially, it's that a lot of people lost money in this period of time. Also, there's this, in the US, there's a law called the Sarbanes-Oxley Act. And what our Sarbanes-Oxley brought was quite a bit of overhead for any kind of public company. It went from maybe $5 million US to keep your company afloat with all the regulations to almost $25 million a year for all this regulation. So today in the US, the only companies that can be public companies are very large companies, and that's led to increasing acquisition culture, or merger and acquisition culture. My last business, when I started 15 years ago, there were maybe 10 competitors, and today there are only 2. So this is going to be an ongoing trend, and a lot of the startups today, really, their goal is to be acquired by another company. So you can see that the acquisition, the red line here, the acquisition and merger line, has been quite healthy, and it's going up and up and up. So if you are going to have a startup and you want to cash out at some point, you have to be thinking quite a bit about who would buy your business and why would they buy your business. Now, this is just a very small part of all the acquisitions that Google has done. I think the list is almost over 80 companies that they've acquired in the last 10 years. And you can see that some of these acquisitions, they became part of an existing product. So for instance, some of these Google Shopping, some of these acquisitions dropped right into an existing product. Others, such as YouTube, created a whole new product. So that's kind of the dynamic that you have to think of. What does the acquiring company need? If they have, maybe the acquiring company has your product, but they're not failing. Sorry, they're not succeeding. They're failing. They're not making much money. They're not generating much excitement. They're not growing their customers. So they acquire your company as kind of a shot in the arm and something that they can move with quickly. For large companies, because of the bureaucratic culture, it's very hard for them to start a new business, to get the talent and to kind of get the mindset or the philosophy of that new business. So by getting an acquisition, they get some people and they get some technology right away, and they can use that to grow faster. So another part of the acquisition is that once you sell your company, you're not out. Usually, in order to fully vest all your shares, you have to stay at the company for a few years. And they'll kind of step and invest your money over time. Now, this is kind of the boring part of due diligence. But the reason it's kind of boring is because there'll be a lot of people involved in evaluating your company. And really, the only way they can evaluate your company is if they have lots and lots of information. These will be Excel sheets. These will be actual documents. These will be lists of for instance, all your patents, all your trademarks, all your agreements. If you have any lawsuits or threatened lawsuits, they would need to know about that. And also, they would need to know about your company policies. Are you actively trying to capture all your IP? Do you have employment agreements? Do you have an HR department? And also, if you use open source or do you use software development kits, where does your technology originate from, and what are the restrictions on your technology? Also, what they're going to look for, I kind of call it here overlapping IP. What it really means, I guess to me, is do you have a story? Do you have a compelling reason that your company is going to succeed? And there'll be the customers, there'll be the product, but there'll also be the intellectual property aspect of it. And what people really want to see is that everything is kind of merging together into a common success model. Okay, another dry part of this is that intellectual property, it's legal stuff. It's fairly complex, and it can be expensive, especially for patents. You need to get involved some outside help, some lawyers. Now, what a patent is, it's kind of an idea. It's, we call it an invention. It has to be new. It has to be something that hasn't been seen before. And if you're able to get a patent after registration, you have it for 20 years from the filing date. And this gives you a limited monopoly for your product. And this is something that your investors will be quite interested in. It's a little bit of a numbers game. The more patents you have, the happier your investors will be. Now, the downside is that the more patents you have or that you're pursuing, the more money you'll be spending. So all this has to kind of be balanced, and I hope today I'll give you a little bit of an overview of what you need to consider in that balance. Now, there's also trademarks. Now, trademarks are, Coca-Cola. I don't know, you see them all around this venue here today. Basically, every one of these logos, every one of these company names is a trademark. And they use this to burn into your brain, Huawei or Line, or even Big Bang is a little bit of a trademark. So these are things that identify your product or the source of your product as your company, so that other people can't zoom in and supply your product with lower quality. Now, there's also copyright. In some ways, copyright is the easiest to obtain. It's pretty much automatic. There's almost every country in the world is a member of the Berne Convention. Now, normally people will put a little bit of a copyright notice on their paper or their software. So this doesn't require a lot of work or expense. But if you are in the entertainment business, then or the arts business, there are some complications. But generally, for most technology, copyright is a little bit one of the easier aspects to manage. Now, there's also trade secret. Now, trade secret is actually the most important intellectual property you have in a company. It basically means everything. It means your client list. It means how much are you paying people? How much are you charging your customers? What's your profit margin? Who are your vendors? Your source code. Anything that people will not see. There's a reason you have locks on your door. There's a reason that you have people sign non-disclosure agreements. That's so it slows down your competition. So you have an advantage over everyone else because you have the information. Now, to kind of show how this comes together in a digital business, we have an example of Avatar, the movie. Now, normally movies are a little bit more of a copyright issue. It's the display of the movie. But actually, for Avatar, they had to do quite a bit of technology advancement in order to pull off the movie. Maybe 15, 20 years ago, the technology wasn't there. So the director and the cinematographer had to step in, and they had to come up with their own designs for the cameras and some of the processing of the movie stills. So it was a big project, but because they had patents, that means that other people cannot reproduce kind of the same results that they were able to obtain. So even today, I don't know, it's been quite a while, but even today, Avatar is kind of one of the most impressive 3D movies ever made. Now, they can also monetize through their trademarks, kind of merchandising. This would be like toys or, trading cards or whatever they can use, games, anything they can use to make additional money. For the Star Wars franchise, some of the merchandising actually makes more money than the movies themselves. But this is an example of how everything can kind of come together into a unified story of how the IP works with the company. Okay, now I'm going to get into an example, kind of a real-life example of a due diligence project. Now this is something that I worked on. My company was considering acquiring another company. And they had, the story that came to me was that they have 138 patents. Now, as a lawyer, patent has a very defined meaning. It means an issued or granted patent application. Now, as it turned out, that number came down quite a bit. And the final number was actually 22. So we went from the review of 140 down to 22. It's a little bit like you get a present and it's in a big box and it has a nice bow, but then as you go down and down and unwrap the present, you find that the actual gift is very small. But that's okay. All these things are part of due diligence is packaging, is preparing the information, making it look good. But this is an example of how that full list came down to something that wasn't as impressive. 131 comes down to provisional applications, which actually are not formal applications. There's no patent rights that you obtain from that. Also, they had some applications that were still pending, and there was uncertainty as to whether those patents would ever issue. So the only thing that they really had as a vested right was 22. Now, as it turned out, they had a lot of other indications of quality during this due diligence, and one was something that could be viewed as negative. They had a lawsuit with a very large company, and this company had over 9,000 patents. And this company had sued them with 3 of those patents. Now, what was impressive was even though this company only had 22 of its own patents, it had 3 patents that it could countersue this very large company with. So it was a little bit of a story of David versus Goliath. And what they eventually were able to do was get a joint dismissal where there's no damages either way, kind of a walk away, as it's called sometimes. So this story actually came across very well. They had many things in place to reduce the cost of their portfolio. They were very focused on acquiring quality patents that could be asserted in a lawsuit, and they had fought off the giant. Now, this company was eventually purchased by another company for about $250 million US. So kind of a success story, but you can kind of see how things have to be evaluated. You have to start with the list, and then you have to actually look at the status of each one of these items, and then look at it in context. Here it was easy to look at it in context because there's an actual lawsuit. Their patents had actually been tested. Okay, now here's another example of how IP can kind of come together. This was for my company. We got acquired by another hard disk drive maker, and this was one of the ways we got the price of our company up. We showed that we had a new helium drive, which I guess there's a lot of science behind it, but basically if you put helium into the hard drive instead of air, there's less turbulence. Frankly, it took my company maybe 12 years of kind of trial and error to get this product to work. But along the way, we got a lot of patents and a lot of trade secrets that supported the technology. And even today, competitors are unable to market a similar drive. But you can see here, I put a lot of, I guess, colorful things up here. This is a logo, so this is a trademark. And down here is some of the marketing material, which is protected by copyright. But also in the marketing material, it talks about how this technology is patented. So this gives a lot of credibility to the product and to the company to show that not only do we have a good product, but it's patented, it's protected. The competitors are going to have a hard time coming in and taking all the business away from us. And now there's also, I guess, for copyrights, there's also the firmware that goes into the hard drive. Okay. Now here I've listed, this is all just public information. Here are all the patents that we had for this technology. With a larger company, that's why startups can get purchased by larger companies because they have a lot more budget. And here there are 47 issued patents on the technology. So it was can you hear me? Okay, it was protected quite well. Okay, now what they'll also look for in your company is, do you have the procedures? Do you have the daily due diligence, the daily effort to collect your intellectual property and protect it? So this is an example of what your procedures could be as a startup. They don't have to be very long. They just have to show that you have a process in place and you're actively trying to capture your IP, that you have a plan. Okay. Now, sometimes people ask me, okay, what are the big problems with due diligence? And a word that comes up quite a bit with any kind of negotiation is, well, the acronym is FUD, and that translates to fear, uncertainty, and doubt. So it is used quite a bit with marketing, and it's basically a way of not necessarily lying, but it's kind of pushing pushing the other side away or getting what you want based on a little bit of an underhanded techniques. Now, and some of the things that can spread FUD are allegations of infringement or lawsuits, whether those lawsuits have actual merit or they don't have merit. So what you want to do with your due diligence, to the extent you have factors that hurt your company or destroy your credibility, what you want to do is have a reason or a story behind it, or have some information that shows that it's not a significant threat. So if you are in a lawsuit, you have to be able to show the status of the lawsuit. You have to show that you have a reputable law firm representing you and that you have a high probability of success. Now, what will also be looked at is what's called sloppiness or inattention to detail. People want to make sure that the contracts you have been fully reviewed, are part of your strategy, and don't contradict your strategy. So some of the things they may be looking for are, have you signed contracts that limit the scope of your future licensing capabilities? Or do you have some kind of joint development agreement or other relationship with other companies that would limit the future growth of your business? Now, if you have software, usually your open source policies are going to be very important because especially if you are using Apache software or some other software, you've essentially given away some of your patent rights. Okay, and this is where I'm going to end with you, and I'm going to try to convince you that you really should always be ready for your due diligence review. It should be part of your culture. You should have someone dedicated within your company to keep track of your IP, to protect your IP, and to make adjustments as they're needed. Also, in any kind of company, you have to justify all your expenses. So, IP, especially patents, and even trademarks to some extent, can be a fairly large expense on an annual basis. So if you're going to be trying to convince your boss to pursue and protect your IP, you have to show the value of your IP. So it's good to, on a quarterly or maybe even a monthly basis, demonstrate to the management and to your investors how you're using your budget and what you're getting for your money with these patents. Also, to the extent I alluded to this earlier, if you do have some weaknesses or some strengths in your portfolio, you want to have something to say about that. Just because you're in a lawsuit, that doesn't necessarily mean it's negative. As I showed in the previous example, if you win the lawsuit or you fight off a larger company, that shows a lot of grit in the company. That shows a lot of good planning, and it shows that you've been doing a good job. Okay, so I think I've said pretty much everything I wanted to say, but I'll say it again. You really want to understand your IP. You really want to protect it. You want to have it categorized. You want to have it organized. You want to be able to explain it. You want to be able to show how it works with your products, and have fun with it, I guess. Thank you very much.